Hey Lake Point, Pastor Michael here to get you caught up on the second week of our series, Beyond Yourself. Now, we live in a world that screams that the secret to happiness is to make lots of money and spend it on yourself. However, as Pastor Nathan explored, there's just one problem with that. It's a lie. It's true we all need food to eat and a place to live and clothes to wear, but once our basic needs are met, money can easily stop helping us and start hurting us. You see, debt is routinely incurred in pursuing the good life, yet psychologists attest that the debt-funded lifestyles lead to depression, anxiety, resentment, stress, denial, anger, frustration, regret, shame, embarrassment, and even fear. Author Randy Alcorn says it best. He says, living large actually makes us smaller. Living the good life, as our culture defines it, results in missing out on the best life. The reality is that those who either hoard their money or spend it all on themselves are the unhappiest people on the planet. That's why Jesus calls us to do something radical. Love others by giving away our money and our time. Now, that sounds like loss, not gain, yet in God's economy, that's exactly how we can expand and enhance our own lives. Jesus made many bold claims that turn our vision of the good life on its head. But one of the most counterintuitive of all his teachings, one that goes against everything we hear and even the intuition of our own heart, is his teaching on money and generosity. Listen to what Jesus says in Acts chapter 20, verse 35. He says, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." In Greek, the word blessed is the word makarios, and it means to be happy. In Hebrew, it's used to describe someone who is experiencing the good life. It's why modern translations say things like, "You are far happier giving than getting." What's fascinating is that all sorts of research from the social science world has shown Jesus' words to be true. Generous people are happier, healthier, they're less depressed, they're less anxious, they're more interested in personal growth, they have better relationships, they have a higher life expectancy, and according to one study, they literally laugh more often. And this is true across every demographic. More money does not equal more happiness. Rather, Jesus' formula of more generosity equals more happiness. It's why a key task of our apprenticeship to Jesus is discovering the joy of living a generous life. Now, there are all sorts of expressions of generosity, being generous with your time, your talents, and your treasures, and those are all good and they're all important, but Nate chose to focus on being generous with your money because it's the thing that Jesus talked about most. In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches, don't store up treasures in heaven here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Jesus is identifying this deep impulse in the human heart to store up treasures. The fascinating thing, as Nate pointed out, is that he doesn't rebuke that impulse. For Jesus, the problem isn't that we want to store up treasure, it's that we store it up in the wrong place, on earth rather than in heaven. Which, by the way, doesn't mean the place you go to when you die. In heaven was a first century Hebrew way of saying in God and what he's doing here on earth. Jesus goes on to say, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Notice that for Jesus, he doesn't say where your time is or where your talent is, he says where your treasure is. Jesus is helping us see that our heart follows our money. We often think the opposite. Our money follows our heart, meaning we spend money on what we love and what we care about. But Jesus is saying that it actually works both ways. We also come to love, worry about, and obsess over what we spend our money on. When we store up treasures on earth, our hearts are racked by fear because we know we can lose it all in a moment, or by greed because we never feel like we have enough. But Jesus has a better way. He says, your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light, but when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. This sounds kind of weird and cryptic to our modern ears, but it's not. A healthy eye was a figure of speech in Jesus' day. In Greek, it implies generousness and generosity, and an unhealthy eye implies stinginess. It was a way of saying there are two different ways of looking at the world that have come to be called an abundant mindset and having a scarcity mindset. If you have an abundance mindset, you look out at the world and you see a world of abundance. You see God as your father and provider, yourself as a child, and all of life as a gift, because this is your father's world and it's teeming with more than enough for everyone. But if you have a scarcity mindset, you look at the world and you see a lot of lack. There's no father provider, you're on your own. Human civilization is this fierce battle over scarce resources. You are either focused on what you have and are afraid you might lose it, or you have what you don't have. You want what you don't have. There are two very different ways of seeing life in general and money in particular. And so the question we all need to answer is, how do we see the world? Is it through abundance or through scarcity? Jesus goes on to say in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, that no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Some translations have, you cannot serve both God and mammon, which is an Aramaic word. The Gospels were written in Greek, but Jesus likely spoke Aramaic. Matthew left this particular word untranslated, and scholars think it's because the word mammon was the name for the ancient Syrian god of wealth. It was Jesus' way of saying that money is like a rival god, aka it's powerful. The sway it has over our hearts is often a demonically animated force at work in our soul and society. Hence, you cannot serve both God and mammon. It's not that it's bad, it's that it's impossible. Mammon will take over your heart unless you resist its gravitational pull. So how do you resist the pull? Well, according to Jesus, through generosity. Now, a biblical theology of generosity does not start with tithing or even with Jesus' command to be generous to the poor. It starts with understanding that God is our Father. See, my kids don't worry about groceries or clothes because they have a mom and a dad who provide for them. And Jesus tells us the same thing, that we don't have to worry about what we will eat or drink or wear because God is our Father. From the very first page of the Bible, we see God say that, look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth and all the fruit trees for your food. From the beginning, what we're seeing is that God is giving, blessing, and loving. Generosity is at the heart of the gospel itself. I mean, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. Of all the ways that God could express the concept of love to us, it's fascinating that he chose to do so through the act of generosity. God seems to be saying the best way I can demonstrate my love to you is by giving. That's why here at Lake Point we like to say love results in generosity. You can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. Second, Jesus is teaching his apprentices about the architecture of our hearts. If we apprentice under Jesus, it should change our relationship to money because it should change our hearts. That's why generosity is more than just tithing or charity. It also includes things like being quick to forgive those who have hurt us, because generosity isn't just about our behavior, it's about our inner nature, it's about our heart. That said, Jesus is teaching his apprentices about the practice of generosity. And all the research on generosity says the same thing, that for generosity to make you happier and healthier, it can't be a one-time event or this random act of kindness. It has to be a practice. In the same way that practicing gratitude will make you a more thankful, content person, practicing generosity will make you a more generous, free person. As you practice generosity and make space for God to move in your heart, he can change your whole life from the inside out. From a lack of fear to trusting God as our provider. From worry about the future to peace with whatever comes. From endless desire for more enjoyment in what we have. From grasping to gratitude, from misery to joy. The first step to a lifestyle generosity is to give something and to give it consistently. It will cost you, literally, to put Jesus' teaching into practice, but you will get back far more than you ever give away, because there's more joy in giving than receiving. Well, friends, thanks for listening. Enjoy jumping into discussion questions. I'll see you next time.